welcome to my brand new segment. It is called Ain't That the Truth? And I'm just so excited to start recording new content. I don't want to solely limit this channel to a one-dimensional thing. I always wanted to be a platform where I'm able to share many different concepts, many different ideas, and just a platform for me to be able to share so much of my own personal experiences in a way that encourages someone else, or just open someone else's eyes. I was led to a lot of information through people who did the very same thing. That just opened my eyes to a lot. So I want to do the same thing. I think information and knowledge is very important in any way that you get it. Important to always desire to be knowledgeable about a lot of things, and most importantly to be knowledgeable about what we do not understand, and in most cases what we do not see. So yes, this segment, Ain't That the Truth, is just something the Holy Spirit inspired me to create based on the truth that He revealed to me, the truth that I got to read, experience, hear from various sources, but the most important source of all is the Holy Book, the Bible. Mine looks different. I know you guys may see it because my phone is on selfie mode, so it looks upside down on your end. But yeah, this looks different because it's called the Creative Journaling Bible. And of course, I saw this and I was like, yes. If you listened to my story in the other segment, I was one way, now I'm different, you would know. If you haven't, check it out. But you would know that I'm a very creative person, a very creative mind, and my being, and my thoughts, and my likes and interests. I've got a very abstract mind, and I like different quirky things. They call to me. I'm very drawn to something that is just out of the ordinary. I mean, my hair color, anything that just screams different, I tend to veer in that direction. So yes, this of course drew me in, and the reason it's not your average Bible is because it allows you to doodle. You are a colorful person and you just want to make the Bible look less dreary, then you can just color and make it look pretty, pizzazz it up. I'm sure you're noticing that mine doesn't look very colorful. This is true because I don't know, it's a bit of a conundrum, but I feel like writing on it is a bit sacrilegious personally to me. I know it is called the Creative Journal Bible, but I don't know, I just feel like if I had to doodle it would be a bit wrong. That's just how I'm thinking. I value it so much that I don't want to ruin my Bible. So yes, this is my ultimate source of truth, amongst many others, but this is the only place that gives you the truth and the full truth, nothing but the truth. I definitely want to now impart the little knowledge I have gained in the past 2 years, and over time, of course, and just what I've been taught, what I feel might be sidelined. Truth is very it's not easily found, or easily understood, and some things may just seem like a coincidence. Some things that happen in our lives may just seem like it's happenstance, but there's no such thing. Honestly, in my opinion, everything happens for a reason, and it's often attributed to a divine reason. I've seen that firsthand. I'm not speaking from someone else's experience, I'm speaking from my own personal experience. I have witnessed remarkable, extraordinary, scary things, that cannot be explained, and or they cannot be explained with the naked eye or through other people. But when you refer to the sources like your Bible, and when you just correlate the information and the Spirit of God speaks to you, you learn to see that things are not what they seem, and there's more. There's definitely more to life. There's more to what we see and think every day. And when you learn to unravel those layers, it just, it begins to make a lot more sense. This is the biblical truth and what I've seen with my own two eyes. So it's personal, it's experiential, and you can take away what you can. And I'm pretty sure some of you will be able to relate to some of the things I will be discussing over the weeks, and whatever the case is, stuff that you have experienced or seen that you couldn't explain at the time and didn't make sense to you at the time. And I'm praying and hoping that this segment will be able to validate some of those things for you. So yeah, this week I'm going to be talking about something that's very personal, very difficult to explain, and just something I never shared, with anybody. I think only 2 people really knew that it was something that I struggled with, my mom and my sister. But even with sharing it with them, it took me a very long time to be able to share it with them and to just articulate it, because it's something that I couldn't explain even to myself, and when things just seem like they are just so far-fetched, like that just can't be true, it's impossible, or you're dreaming, or you are delirious or whatever. There's always some form of rational reason, for illegitimizing what we feel and what we see and what we experience, especially when we can't explain it, with the natural eye. But it was very difficult to understand, prior to my subservient transformation, and just prior to just me being woke, spiritually woke, if I can put it that way. It was very difficult to identify with, and just to live through and to explain and to accept, and I struggled with it for so long, since I was a child, since I can remember, really, a very, very young age. So this topic today is on sleep paralysis. So for those of you who don't know, I didn't know the term until quite recently myself, considering it was something that I battled with for quite literally most of my childhood and adulthood. It's only recently that I knew the term sleep paralysis. Came to that term maybe 3-4 years ago. I can't remember, but it was quite recent, because I didn't even think it was normal. I didn't think it was something that people experienced. I thought it was just me suffering on my own, and a lot amongst all this other stuff going on in my head at the time, with all of my mental illnesses and just the stuff that I would deal with on my own. I thought it was just one of those things that I just had to deal with, and it just added a notch to my crazy factor, because I was just on another level completely, So sleep paralysis, for those of you who don't know, scientific terms for it, is a condition where you are asleep but you're conscious. It's in one of the stages of sleep. So I'm sure there are different stages of sleep, but the most prominent stage is REM, which is your deep sleep, when you are completely deep in sleep, so yes, sleep paralysis now happens when you are in between the stages. All those stages of sleep is interrupted somehow, and you are conscious but asleep at the same time, and conscious in the sense that your mind is awake and you are fully aware that you are asleep, you're in your room, you're in your bed, but you can't move, you can't wake up, your eyes can't open up, you can't, in some instances there are different types of sleep paralysis. Of the other cases, you can't even breathe, it feels like you're quite literally dead, if I can put it that way, but alive. Your body can't move, you can't move your body, you can't move your mouth, you can't breathe, and it's a very very, very scary experience. I have had it numerous times, countless times really, throughout my life, and every time felt like the first time, and every time was just as scary, if not scarier, than the previous time. And I was so prone to having it that I would even have it in the most inopportune times. It didn't matter where I was. It wasn't solely relative to me sleeping at night, but it would happen if I was taking a nap, for example, in a car, if we were coming from a long distance trip, on the couch, or, just dozing off, and I would be stuck in that state. And scientifically, they say it can last a minute to 2 minutes. It feels like a lifetime, really. But yes, you are very conscious of the fact that you are unconscious. That's the best way to put it. And it is not a pleasant experience in the least. Science, of course, can always explain certain situations and symptoms away. And by naming it, maybe they feel that it is not something to be worried about. That's not something that you should be concerned about. It's normal, in a way, if I can put it that way. Some people can treat it, whether it's allowing yourself to take sleeping tablets that knocks you out throughout the night, where you're not conscious of that state, or whatever way, herbal stuff. I tried a lot of things. It was one of the reasons why I resorted to binge drinking, even, because it was just such a terrible thing to experience. I would call it a nightmare to my mom and my sister because I didn't know how else to explain it, but that's as close as I could explain it and recall it to them. From as young as as 7, 8 years old, as far as I can remember, maybe sooner, I don't know, but I was just always very conscious of spiritual. I was a very jittery child. I didn't like being exposed to things that I didn't understand. They would always get me very scared. For the longest time, I hated to sleep alone or in the dark, because I always thought that there was just, something more in my presence, or in our presence, that I couldn't see or explain at the time. But I was very conscious of the unseen, if I can put it that way, and I just grew up being very aware, but quiet, like a silent observer of that type of stuff. And I hated horror movies. I hated anything that attributed to a sinister reality, because I dreamt it, and I woke up to it half the night. So I really didn't want, and I felt like that stuff would make it worse, would exasperate an already bad situation. So I really hated just finding myself in situations where I was in, a scary environment, or I was witness or exposed to scary things. And just to describe to you just the experiences that I had with sleep paralysis. Sure, there's so many instances, but the ones that stand apart for me more than anything, that I won't forget, are two. All of them really, but I'll name a few. The first one, I remember I must have been in high school, and I was sleeping. It was during the weekend. I was sleeping on the couch during the day, taking a nap, and I went into another state of sleep paralysis, of course. And it's so incredibly frightening, because you are aware of everything around you. It's like you're dreaming of where you fell asleep. You are completely asleep, but in your dream, you are sleeping on that very couch in that very dining room, and the TV is there, and you're alone and there's no one there. Exactly how you fell asleep is what you're seeing in the dream, and it's just playing out like you stuck in this position that you cannot get yourself out of, and I remember urging myself to wake up. I couldn't move, of course, but I dragged my hand. Somehow I got the will to pick up my hand, but it felt like my hand weighed a ton, like it was a weight, and it took me forever, and I just kept thinking, if I can just have my hand open my eyelids, I would be awake, and I would get out of this conscious state or subconscious state, and I remember just dragging this hand, trying to open my eyelid. Eventually I did. I don't know how long that took. Obviously in my dream state it seems longer than it does in reality, and it would be interesting to know what it looks like for someone who would have walked into the lounge while I was sleeping, if that really was what was happening, realistically. But anyway, I managed to open my eyelid, and I thought, okay, once I open my eyelid, I'll wake up. But no, because I'm still asleep. And as I opened my eyelid, all I saw was this red realm. I was so frightened. I couldn't explain it. And then I would close my eyes quickly, and then I would open it again, and it was just red. I couldn't explain it. It was like a different planet or a different world, but it was just red. And I got chills, and every time I would always find myself in this conscious state, or the subconscious state rather, in the state of sleep paralysis. I would always start praying. I would always start pleading the blood of Christ. I would call on the name of Jesus, because even in that state, I just knew, man, this is not normal. There's something very sinister and something very evil attached to this. It can't be normal to feel like you are quite literally buried alive, night after night after night. And I would plead the blood of Christ. And the crazy thing about doing that in that state is I would feel my body burn. Every time I started praying and every time I started calling on the name of Jesus, my body would start vibrating like it's burning. Like I would feel like someone is quite literally got a torch on me, and I would start buzzing, and it felt like I was going to explode, But even while feeling that, as scary as it was, I kept praying, I kept pleading the blood of Christ, I kept praying, and eventually I would wake up and find myself out of that state, and every time I wake up, it's like I'm quite literally gasping for breath because I couldn't breathe in that state. So I wake up with this gasp, this breath of life. And I experienced that, no joke, on the daily. It was painful. There were times where I would battle to sleep, and I would be scared to sleep because I wouldn't know what realm I'll find myself in, what state of mind I would wake up to, and even though I did do what I did in praying and whatnot, it still was a scary experience because I always felt like more could happen. What more could happen today? Tomorrow it was this experience, tomorrow it'll be another experience. I was just always so frightful of how much deeper into the state I could get into, and what I would be exposed to and what I would see. So it really just terrified me. And then the second time that I really just cannot forget for the life of me was feeling that in this state of mind, someone was in bed with me, and it felt like someone had their hand around my waist and they were pinning me to the bed, and it just felt so real. Like every time I was in this state, I just couldn't shake the realness of it, and the crazy part is when I would wake up, it would feel like a dream. So it would feel like I've gone mad and I've just kind of like created this whole thing and made it up. And I'd often even ask myself, maybe it was nothing, it's nothing to worry about, it was just a dream. But the often I had it, it just kept coming to me that, man, this can't be right, this can't be normal. So yeah, and I struggled to sleep, and that's why, of course, I found ways to help me cope. Reading. It funny enough, it helped me, yes, because it helped me just forget about it, and just run away. And in most cases, I would stay up most of the night, if not all of the night, reading. And then I would be so tired that I would fall asleep quickly. And if that didn't work, I would resort to drinking so I could pass out, and that was the worst of it, actually, because there was a period in my life where I just drank every day, like blackout drinking, because I was just so fearful of going to sleep, not knowing what I would see and what I would experience, and I would always wake up just so tired. I was just perpetually tired and just frustrated and angry and irritable and just annoyed, because I couldn't run away from my mind during the day, and I couldn't run away from it in sleep. Like, sleep is the one place where you think, okay, you'll finally get some peace and rest here. This is the place where you can just shut out the world, shut out your problems and just forget. But I couldn't even do that there, and I was just so unhappy because I felt like life was just out to get me, conscious and subconsciously. And I just kind of coasted with this struggle, really, and also just kind of swept it under the rug, because even though I knew there was a sinister connotation to it, I didn't want to admit it to myself as well, because I just didn't want to admit that number one, evil existed to that extent spiritually. I didn't want to admit it because I thought it would make it even more real than it already was. And I didn't want to accept the fact that I was tormented to this degree as well. It sounded crazy to me, what more to other people if I had to explain it to them that this is what I'm going through every night, and I mean, the stuff that I saw and experienced, I couldn't even tell you half of it. Quite literally, my whole life I experienced the type of sleep deprivation, and obviously in different stages and different levels, and just feeling just like I was suffocating. But without a doubt, every time I went through it, it didn't matter how deep in my faith I was, it didn't matter how devout I was as a believer, but I always in that state. I remember, as much as fear consumed me, because it did, like, I can't even tell you, have you ever been so scared in your life that you're paralyzed? And even though, yes, I was paralyzed in that state, but it was just, even my mind was just so frozen, because it's scary to realize that you are quite literally in between realms, if I can put it that way, and I would just get so scared and frightened. But even in that fear, I knew that there was a name I could call that could make this all go away. I knew that there was a name I could declare that would save me, that would vanquish the evil, and triumph, and though it didn't make sense, at the time, I still said his name every time without fail, and that was the only way I was able to get out of that state. Every time, no lie. Every time I said his name, every time I pleaded the blood of Christ, every time I said the name of Jesus, I was able to break free of what was holding me captive in my dreams and in my sleep in that moment. I mean, for me, that was a no-brainer. If whatever that was responded to me saying and praying like that, then it can only mean that it is something evil and sinister. And it just confirmed the validity of what I was experiencing. It's not some mental thing that you can just, brush aside or pop a pill and it'll just be okay, And just from that moment on, of course, I started understanding that there's more to this than I actually know or understand, And of course, when I gave my life fully to Christ during the lockdown in 2020, he just started revealing all these things to me, and that was one of the biggest changes in my life. I mean, amongst me not smoking anymore and drinking and, all the stuff that I used to obsess over, all those desires just went away. you know. My sleep paralysis was another thing that he completely freed me of, you know. And I mean, I can't even tell you what a dream it is, what a gem it is to be able to sleep at night and not be plagued by whether or not you will wake up feeling like you're in a grave or not. You know, it was just such a beautiful thing to experience. I still remember beyond time, this real life. Did I sleep through a night? You know, and I didn't need alcohol. I didn't need to read excessively throughout the night. I didn't need a stimulant. I didn't need a sleeping tablet. I slept like a baby. And that was just like, for me, just confirmation as well of just how real my experience and my transformation with God was, you know, and just how personal it was, and how spiritually linked it all was as well, you know. It wasn't easy, of course, to come to those realizations. It wasn't easy to deny a lot of the stuff that I loved. You know, yes, the desires may have changed, but some of the choices I had to make were painful choices to make because I knew the truth. You know, the truth that is all in here. And I had to make sure that my life aligned to that truth. And in most cases, I had to say no to the stuff that I still wanted to do. Over and above what I wanted to do, God's truth for me was the most important, and I had to live in accordance to that truth. And it was only in doing that that He was able to free me from a lot of things that held me hostage and bondage, you know, a lot of things that just kind of like robbed me of my peace and my sanity. And my mind was the biggest blockage of all, you know, like my mind was just my biggest enemy in a lot of things. And it also contributed to the sleep paralysis as well, because it was just darkness on loop playing in my head 24/7, like non-stop, you know. And to be able to be free from that for me was just the biggest life-changing experience of my life, that, you know, I can never ever just sweep under the rug or keep quiet about, you know, especially if someone is going through the same thing. So the truth for me with this comes is that I don't deny that mental illnesses are there. You know, I don't deny that people suffer from a lot of emotional turmoil that result, you know, in mental you know, challenges in whatever way. You know, trauma, I know, is one of the biggest reasons why people are diagnosed with, you know, schizophrenia or PTSD or whatever the case is. And, you know, some people are born with certain conditions that need to be medicated and stuff. So I don't deny the validity of that. But in all honesty, just what we allow our minds to meditate on, you know, what we allow our minds to digest, to take in, to respond to, what we feed out to our mind, you know, especially the negative, are all a result of mental illnesses, you know. And in most cases it's because of evil spirits that are attached to that stuff. I cannot deny and tell you that even though I was heavily you know, I was an anxious mess. I was inundated with self-doubt and self-esteem issues, you know, and I mean now the sleep paralysis. I never once wanted to be medicated for it, because the Spirit of God in the back of my mind always cautioned me, you know, some things don't need medication. And that's just the truth. In most cases, medication makes you worse, you know, or it even fuels your already broken state of mind. You can't just slap on a depression pill when you are struggling with sleep. There's always more to a state of mind or a person's being than just diagnosing them, you know, or giving them a tablet or some form of reprieve, because that doesn't deal with the real issue. And in most cases, the real issue is spiritual. I can tell you so much stories of what I've seen in the last 2 years. It just confirms and validates all that I went through and all that I was going through, and it's all rooted to a spiritual root, and until we learn to address and ask God to just reveal to us where we what we are not seeing, what we are not understanding, He can pray that He helps us understand and identify where the issue is. He will definitely help remove it as well. I've seen people get healed miraculously from crazy illnesses. I've heard of stories of people who've been healed, from insane stuff. And that is not because they were born that way. No. How does someone get diagnosed with bipolar when they're 20 years old or 21 years old? How does that happen just like that? And it's not because of a chemical imbalance in one's brain, but it's because of what spiritual connotations is attached to that person, and for some people this may not sound like it makes sense, or it's bogus, or whatever the case is, but like I said, it's experiential. And only once you understand and see, and only once you've been freed from it as well. I can speak like this now because I have been freed from something that used to haunt me and torment me for almost 30 years of my life, and I can speak freely and confidently about what I've experienced, have seen, because I know the healing power of God. I know the goodness of God, and I know His faithfulness, and I know His truth, and I know for a fact anything that we struggle with, the solution is all in here. It doesn't matter what it is. You can find the answers that you seek for every challenge in life in this very book. So anybody who's been struggling with sleep paralysis, and even if you think it's a fluke, if it's happened once or twice, or whatever the case is, stuff like that doesn't go away until you deal with the problem, until you pray about it, and until you quite literally renounce it from your life. And in most cases, it's attached to stuff that you're doing, unsavory things that you're doing, that are opening a doorway for that kind of spirit to be linked and to attach to you, to torment you at night while you're sleeping. So I think it was definitely for me, just opened my eyes into also just evaluating and reassessing the choices that I made, and the stuff that I entertained that are not godly. And that's also another truth. God says we mustn't do certain things, not because He's trying to pass judgment or whatever, but He knows mentally they're not good for us. There are ramifications for everything that we entertain or endorse, that is dark and that is just unsavory. There's always a ramification where that is concerned, and that's why God, instills in us virtue. He wants us to be pure and clean and righteous, because He wants to keep us pure, and He wants us to have a sound, peaceful mind, sound, peaceful sleep, that you're not tormented, about things that you have no control over in some cases. For me, it was important to just bring that out and to share that aspect of my life. Like I said, very personal. It's not something that I shared really with anybody. And to be able to share it now on this platform, then you must really know and understand that it's not me, it can only be God, and my life is His now anyway. So what He says I do. Thanks so much for listening, and I pray that this information was enlightening to you and you were able to take away from it, and just share it with someone else who may be struggling with sleep paralysis or any form of night terrors. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be isolated to the state of being where you are conscious but unconscious, but even nightmares and night terrors are also spiritually linked to a lot of bad stuff. Also, do the research yourself. I definitely urge you to just keep looking for answers. believer in Google. You know, everything that I reference is always first, of course, from the Bible, but also just to see other people's opinions and commentaries on a lot of stuff that I've seen or heard of, experienced myself. So acquire the knowledge, you know, get it from different sources if you need it validated for whatever reason, but just don't think things are what they are, because they're not. You know, there's more. You know, it can't just be. And I think that's just what society has indoctrinated us to thinking and believing that certain things happen because that's just the way it is. The saying it is what it is. No, it's not. And we need to shift that mentality. You know, make up your own mind. Make up your own decision on something. Don't allow society to sway your understanding of certain things. I think it's very important to have your own mind. Next week, I don't know. I don't want to put dates anymore. I feel like I never meet my deadline. So I'm just gonna say the next video. We'll leave it at that. And now, of course, I'm juggling 2 different segments. So it's gonna be interesting to see which video you can expect first. But my next video on this segment will, like I said, just address the truth, the biblical truth, and my experiential truth on specific matters that I have experienced and I've seen. And I'll also just delve into just what God says on the matter. I think it's very important, you know, especially because truth is so relative nowadays. But yeah, God's word stands, in my opinion. Don't take my word for it, take his. You know, use his as reference for everything that you do. I will see you next time for the next segment of Ain't That the Truth?